Hello, everyone, and welcome to the roundup here on Blood Bowl Live. Here to go through all of the week's action from the ADBBL Season 8. We have got 9 games to bring you this week, and joining me, as always, Mr. Scott Bryant. Scott, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chris. How are you today? Barry, are you excited for Christmas?
Sure, why not? I'm sure it will be fine. And also joining us, Mr. Tom Hovell. Tom, good evening, sir.
Festive greetings, you all?
Yes, very good, thank you. 9 games, our last one before Christmas. 9 games to go through. We're going to dive straight in. We are not going to hang around this week. Many games to go through, and we want to get through them all. So we are going to start off. So it feels peculiar because we've got games that were played today on a Monday, which obviously doesn't normally happen. So very fresh games. But we're starting back earlier last week with the World's Edge Berserkers versus the Hillbilly Howlers, a 2-0 victory for the Dwarf team against the Chaos Chosen. Jamie, he'd been kind of sat in this group for a while, and we'd kind of been watching the results, and there'd been a lot of draws, but he's got a win in the bag now. He's got another win, which we'll come to later. His season's starting to build a little bit. Simon's luck not helping him at all. I was briefly in the shop for this game, and Simon, I think on turn 1, lost an incredible number of players very, very quickly and very unfortunately. I believe he lost 2, I think, to a pitch invasion, and then immediately lost another one straight off the bat. A very unfortunate start, but a very good result here for Jamie and his Dwarfs. Scott, coming to you first then. We've been kind of waiting for Jamie to get some results in. He started with a couple of draws against good opponents. But now 2 wins back to back, a good thing to kind of build on to for his last few games.
Absolutely. Just to use that phrase, we've talked about Jamie, and by Jamie's standards, the World's Edge Berserkers are a very, very credible team. They're a very dangerous team. We know how much skills they've got inherently across the board, and we've got specific players like the Blitzer, who has a very good skill set. New team for Simon. We know that he started, in a bit of a sticky patch because with just the 1 reroll as well. And this was the first game for Simon with no inducement. So you're on an evil, an evil A level, should I say, team value. You're looking at this match, and initially it seems to be on par. Nothing, or only 2 part-time assistant coaches in terms of the inducements. But to start 3 men down, against a coach with such experience, and especially playing these Dwarves as Jamie, it just felt that the momentum continued with Jamie, and he went all the way through it and saw it all the way home. And no matter what Simon tried, when you've got that start and then you end up with 4 casualties, it's a long old day in the office.
It's a unfortunate result for Simon. He's kind of, since he dropped the Underworld Denizens, he's kind of had a bit of a return to some very unlucky dice rolls that he's had to deal with. And looking at the players he's then lost here, he's got a player with sure hands who is missed next game, a player with block with missed next game. Tom, looking at Simon's team, he is being quite patient with the majority of his skills. He's chosen guard, block, sure hands, and block. So he's being quite patient. Do we think he's probably looking at maybe a 2-season build here and just sort of taking it patiently and seeing what next season brings?
Yeah, I think so. I do think that's sort of basically the thought on that process. It's an interesting one, this game, because Simon did take inducements. By the looks of things, he did have 40k of inducement, and took 2 part-time assistant coaches.
And he's obviously going for the reroll. He's going for the kickoff event just in case they do get the 6. Yeah,
and picking up on what you said, Scott, about not having many rerolls, I wonder whether, in hindsight, the team mascot might have been a better option.
Well, looking at it, actually, I take a step back as well, because I thought Sam was playing 2, but looking at the sideline staff on tour play, he's actually on 3 at the moment. So suggests it just shows that, you know, especially in Simon's, you know, feel for Simon on that. If you look, but I think no matter how many rerolls you've got, if you're 3 players down on the opening drive, that's really, really painful.
Absolutely. But not to take anything away, but you know, we've mentioned this before with Jamie's Dwarfs. That is a formidable team. You know, we've got a number of coaches now with, you know, teams that look immense. There's a lot of teams that have got 1 or maybe 2 players that are kind of skilled out and look like threats, but these dwarfs with mighty blow and block on all the players that didn't originally come with block looks a threatening force.
I think it is starting to look like whatever playoff you are in, there's going to be some pretty highly skilled teams that you're going to come across. Simon's got 2 games left to play. He's missing 2 players. He's a chaos blocker. He lost a blocker in that game, which is going to be really tough. But 2 games to maybe bring himself up the table somewhat. That win and another win that we're going to see later on takes Jamie up to 6th in the table at the moment. So Jamie is going to start to be putting some pressure on some of those teams in the top 4 to see whether with his remaining games he can make a bit of a late charge for it. Well done, both coaches. Well played game. Unlucky to Simon, and well done to Jamie on that one. We will move on to our next game, which was a very important one in my division. Dead Star Belgrave versus the T-Belly Trudgers. A game that I very much had a keen eye on because I knew that a victory for the Shambling Undead team meant that I stayed ahead of the Halflings. I'm watching every game in my division now to see whether I can fail in both my last 2 games and not have to worry about it. Good amount of casualties coming in for the Shambling Undead side. These are 2 coaches who know each other so well. Justin and Dave play against each other in our league. They've played against each other in the Ipswich League and probably tournaments as well. Very much know each other's kind of style and way to play. And a very, very close result, which only got the victory on a turn 16 touchdown at the very end. It looked like I was playing a friendly in the shop at the time, kind of looking over at the table. It looked like Dave had got quite deep into the Halflings half, and then was kind of settled in and keeping himself in the right place, and hoping that Justin didn't put off any shenanigans here. Tom, Dave started a bit slow. He got 2 losses from his first 2 games. He's now starting to build a few results here, starting to get himself back into the picture for this half of the table. He's got a very strong squad there that I think any remaining games and then playoffs should worry about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. He started off this season not with the best start, so to speak. But again, I think we mentioned it previously. He was up against two kind of fantastic coaches, shall we say? You know, in Acredes and John. So, and then he started to get his form back in, as you quite rightly put it. Where he's now at this point, he won against Leanne and then came up against Justin on this side of things. So yeah, I think you should never. We've mentioned it about other people as well. You should never underestimate anyone. It was interesting that on this particular game, Cindy and Rodney were taken by the Halflings. Rodney's starting to become a bit of a fan favourite of Justin's by the looks of things because he's taken him a number of times now. But potentially, luckily for Dave, Cindy was sent off on turn 3, which I didn't know what that was all about. Maybe they'd used the double.
I'm assuming that's the special skill that has got Cindy sent off there.
On that side of things. And then I wonder whether, and also Rodney didn't play any real part by the looks of things on the game at all.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if either Dave or Justin in the chat to let us know what sort of whether Rodney had much of an impact in this one. Scott, the Shambling Undead are quite an interesting matchup for the Halflings because you've got 2 Strength 5 players, while they're not strength 6, you do have the option to go up against some trees if you want to. You've got a bit of an option there to do it. So it feels like quite a good matchup here with your kind of both teams with their big strong centerpieces and then other things around it. So quite an even matchup, possibly taking the tiers out of it.
I think it was very even matchup. Both coaches were coming into this on the back of wins. Dave, to Tom's point, had just come off his first win of the season against Blackhawks, and then obviously I think it was some sort of lizard team that
something like that.
Something I can't remember exactly, but Justin had won. To your point, Chris, those trees have been playing especially well, in combination with a lot of throwing halflings that Justin. That's his sort of his USP this season, really, up against a very, very experienced coach in Dave. And to your point, in terms of they do seem balanced, looking at Dave as well, he does have those specific players, Rio Murderland, Stephen Graveyard, Robert Lewandowski, very much skilled up, very much this team is built around those 3 key players as well. So wasn't expecting a runaway victory for either one, was expecting it to be very tight. Reflection of the skill set and the experience of both coaches. And that's ultimately what happened, with that last turn touchdown, securing that win and therefore giving Dave that momentum.
Well done to Dave. Well done to Justin. A hard fought game. This one. It was another. We're getting lots of big games now coming up in the. It's a bit luck of the draw because you don't know who's going to be at the top of the table and who isn't. But we're starting to see fixtures become more and more important as groups are very, very close. And the NBC is a very, very close group at the minute. So this was a key fixture and a key win for Dave to get. So well done to you both. Great game played out there. We will move on to the next game, which was back to the World's Edge Berserkers and another 2-0 victory against the Lavender Lynxes. 4 casualties coming from the Dwarf side here against the Amazons. Graham, it's really tough. I see every now I think back at key results that I can think of Graham's, and I think it must be bad luck because Graham does have a habit of getting battered in several games that I've seen. We saw it with his Rats in previous seasons, and he does put his players in the firing line and takes some hits off them. And he does take a beating. He does take a beating quite often. 1 player dead in this game, 5 injured, so there's probably a couple in there that are results of dodges as well. Tom, we've just been talking about Jamie and how good his team is. For Graham, he's been quite patient with his side, and he does have quite a lot of good chosen skills there. But dwarves are going to be very hard for Amazons to break armor on. They're going to have the tackle to combat your dodging. Probably just a really bad matchup for him.
Yeah, I think this is probably the worst possible opponent against for the Amazons, as you say, with all that tackle in there, taking away their primary skill to kind of move around, and equally losing 2 players within 2 turns right at the start is always a bit kind of demoralising, so to speak. It does look like one of those games of attrition, really, doesn't it? Where I don't know who actually started the actual game or not, because I think that first turn 1 injury must have been a kickoff event, because there's no dwarf saying that it got the casualty. It's one of those unfortunate situations where you're up against it and you just maybe not quite knowing exactly how to get around your opponent's team.
I did get a message from Graham about this game and about kind of what happened in this one. And it does sound relatively incredible. First turn managed to get the ball, moved into scoring range for turn 2, whilst also setting up protection for the ball carrier. Multiple dwarves dodging through tackle zones and then frenzying the ball carrier off the pitch. Ball then thrown in and off the end zone, then onto the other side of the pitch to finally be thrown back into Graham's half in front of an unmarked Dwarf. Dwarves then ran up and battered the remaining Amazons. By turn 2, he had one line woman left standing and in range to reach the carrier. Used a dodge, re-roll to dodge, a re-roll to rush, and then failed a pro attempt to re-roll the both down. Failed that. And was killed for the attempt. I mean, that's just up to turn 2. The dwarfs then just walked it in, battered other Amazons en route. Apothecary, the apothecary lets her die to save my skilled blitzer from death, just to badly hurt. He said it felt like the dwarfs were mocking the Amazons by turning off their dodge skill and then doing their own dodging without the need for skills or rerolls. And that must feel, Scott, that must feel pretty painful when you are you're the edge team with the built-in dodge and you can't get a dodge to work. That's almost out of your hands and just a bit painful.
Tackle is a skill that can make you weep as a coach, especially as an edge coach. Yes, I do. I do feel the pain for Graham on that one, especially then if to rub salt into the proverbial wound. Jamie has decided to do a lot of dodge shenanigans himself as well and getting away with it, and then having a frenzy surf on top of it. So Graham, feel your pain. If actually you look at, I think that sort of tells the story of Graham's season. It is his first season with the Lynxes. It is a very, new team for him, especially, he's moving away, still in the edge category because he's moving away from Skaven into Amazon. So a lot of that dodge, a lot of the, the sort of GFIs within his skill set. If we look at the previous matches that he's played, he's always been very close. He's always been having a draw, almost a win, having a loss, almost a draw. So he's not too far away. That we'll come on to as well. But something that Tom mentioned about the attrition, if you look at Graham, he's actually got 20 casualties against him. And I'm very conscious of that because I think he's just knocked me off the most casualties leaderboard as well. And I think having that number of casualties and that starts to play in terms of your team, the attrition rate, and just being able to keep that consistency and those central skills on your team on the pitch. So something just continues the theme. Jamie's finding a bit of form. This on the back of his previous win as well. So those the dwarfs are still looking unfavourable for a lot of people.
We have to recognise as well a very unlucky draw for Graham, playing Amazons and 3 Norse teams this season. A lot of block there, a very, very unlucky draw for his team. But we will come on to Graham a bit later because there is a good result to come. So we will get on to that. Moving on to another very important game at the top of the NBC here. The Orphic Gladiators in their last game of the group stage up against Dead Star Belgrave and holding them on to a 1-1 draw here. 2 casualties to 1 in favour of the Shambling Undead side. But both coaches missing the opportunity to shoot themselves up the table, but getting some very important points on the board in a game that one of many games that we're referring to as like 6-point games this season, because Dave really needed to slow down Luke, who was already up the top there and has a good number of points. Luke really needed to slow down Dave because he's going to be looking over his shoulder. Scott, we can probably say that realistically, both coaches here are 2 that we think could end up in the top 4. They've both taken points off each other, which everyone else around them is going to be very much enjoying, but probably not going to be too upset with the result because a loss for either of them would have been really, really bad.
At this stage of the season, Chris, a loss is so much preferable. A loss is just a end of season event. So to walk away with a draw means you've got the opportunity to get into that top 4 in your remaining matches as well. Good to see Ryan, the Renegade Rat Ogre, who's got block, earned that over the season as well. do what rat ogres do, cause a casualty on their second turn, and then get injured themselves at the beginning of the next half as well. So, yeah, love a bit of that with a rat ogre. We'll come on to talk about roguers more shortly. At the start of this match, I thought the momentum was with Dave. We talked last week about Luke, a great first season with this new team for him. So he's really playing Chaos Renegade, taken them ridiculously well. So shout out there to Luke in chat this evening. And I'll be perfectly honest, I was expecting Dave with that momentum coming off the back of the win against the Halflings. I thought that was going to push Dave through, but Luke did an incredible job in terms of managing to get, he got the first half touchdown. Dave scored, and then in terms of term 12? 13, got to get my eyesight sorted. So for Luke to hold that out, to get that 1-1 draw, kudos to him. He's playing very, very well. And I think he's a coach that a lot of people see him playing the Renegades and maybe are wondering or maybe thinking, actually, if I dodge you in the next round draw, I'm not going to lose too much sleep over that.
I messaged Luke afterwards, and he said that 3 turns of double skulls in a row stopped either him or Dave taking a lead at the end. So scoring on turn 13, getting him to score early was exactly what Luke needed to do. And then double skulls for both coaches prevented anyone making a breakthrough. So it sounds like it could have gone one way or another and just about missed out. Tom, Luke has played all of his games now. He sits high up in the table. He sits 3rd place in the table at the moment. Only touchdown difference stopping him from being 2nd place. Lots of coaches below him who are not only have games to play but have to play each other. It's going to be quite nervy for him now, looking at the results coming in and having that one eye over his shoulder, seeing if he can cling on to that top 4 spot.
Yeah, absolutely. But equally, just a reminder to everyone, we're finishing this part of the actual season on the 19th. So as you quite rightly say, there are quite a lot of games still left to be played. So it'll be interesting to see if they all get completed or not within that timescale. Equally, having his Rat Ogre out could potentially be a big difference if he does go through to what happens next. Luke's played this team really well this season. I think it's one of those teams that not only has played well, but that Luke's actually enjoyed playing with as well. And there's nothing better than having a team that not only plays well, but actually is enjoyable to play. I think that's an extra bonus, so to speak. So I think Luke will be really pleased with his where he's currently standing and the games he's played. And I don't know about you guys. I've never played Chaos Renegades, but that Dark Elf always seems to be the main touchdown provider.
Yeah, I think he's got your edge, hasn't he? He's got your edge to be your ball carrier to be able to dodge your way around the pitch. Losing the Rat Ogre is going to be tough. Have either of you had? I've had. I think it was a few Ducks seasons ago where I lost my Croxagore in game 6 of the group, and I had to go into my first knockout game, a Croxagore and a Croxagore and a Saurus down for my lizard team, which was quite painful. Managed to just about get through it. Have either of you two had a key player go just before a knockout game?
Before a knockout game, no, but I've had a key player previously, actually 2 seasons ago, season 6, Skaven. For whatever reason, I struggled. I rolled the dice that I couldn't keep the Rat Ogre on the pitch. And I think the stat was, of the 96 drives I had, I think he was only on the pitch for like 18 or 20. So an absolute crap. It was a crap return on investment, and it was a standing joke in the end. So yeah, they can either be very, very good. Well, arguably they could be argued the best big guy out there, or not, as the case may be. So yeah, I feel the pain, especially Luke. Especially he's done incredible work getting that Roger to have a block skill as well.
Tom,
Yes,
ever lost
big?
Ever lost a player before a big game, Tom?
I just lose players full stop. For me, it's the opposite. It's usually at the start of the season, and that's my unfortunate downfall of some of my teams, that you lose key players like big guys right at the start of the season, and they're so expensive, and it just impacts on SPP and delivering well. That's my downfall.
Well done to Luke and well done to Dave. I think come the end of the group stage, both coaches could be looking at this game as a very, very important point or a very, very catastrophic 2 points lost, but we will not know until the group stage is over. So well done to both coaches for a great game there. Moving on to our next game, which is our very own Mr. Scott Bryant winning a 2-0 victory for the Corn team here against the Wood Elves. In a game that was on our stream, you can catch it over
2-1.
Sorry, 2-1.
2-1. 2-1. Yeah, just
2-1, a 2-1 victory for the Corn team. You can watch this over on the YouTube channel. It's one of the streams that we did. It was a very interesting stream to watch near the end of the game, and watching the Elves once they went when it was 1-1, once they went 2-1 down, and watching them kind of position and get into the best place that they could in order to try and get that equalizer. The Corn team doing just about what they needed to stop that from happening. Scott, why don't you tell us how this one went down?
This is a very interesting match. Shout out to Phil for a really good, enjoyable match. Thank you for that, Phil. It was a good one. As Chris said, you can go watch it on YouTube if you want. Just a few things in chat before I give that. Thank you, Carl, for the nice nod. No, I cannot confirm or deny if we are going to do some impromptu burglary after the show, but thank you for that. Yes, I can confirm as well, Luke, that we possibly as well, Phil, we may be releasing an album. Can't talk about it as well, non-disclosure agreements and all the rest of it. In terms of the match itself, going back to the Corn, just the Wood Elves coming back off the back of their first loss to the season, quite an injured and patched up Wood Elf team as well. I did have 80k, that's how patched up it was in inducement, so I decided to take the Squirrel just so I had an extra body on the pitch. As much as that, we know what the Squirrel can do, but even though he's going to get 3 dice a lot if he gets targeted, decided to put that on the pitch as well. I took the kick, decided to go for it as well, try and get an early score. And kudos to Phil. He pressured me a lot. The ball was sacked. It went everywhere. I managed to get a turn 4 touchdown. I was thinking of stalling, but Phil was not giving me that opportunity, and he really kept pressurizing. So the weather, decided to be nice, which was quite nice for a change. And as you can see, the injuries started to creep as well. So injury on turn 2, injury on turn 7, plus a KO. So already down in terms of, it's down to 9 or 10 at halftime as well, with some KOs. And Phil continued the pressure in the second. Well, towards the end of the first half, he continued it. He again then got Acorn the Squirrel just before his Corn goal. He was looking very beastie at the moment. Got that touchdown to level it. And the second half, there was a lot of elf bullshittery going on. A lot of leaps into cages, 1 dice blitzes, 1 dice blocks, but just couldn't. When I did strip the ball would not fall for me. It fell for Phil and his guys. Even on a 5-up catch, they caught it, and Phil did what he did well. He went down, scored on turn 14, so I pressured him to score it. He did, and to that point, the dice were not working. They didn't quite feel they were working or getting where I've been previous in the season. And again, I was once, to your point, Chris, on turn 16, it was 1 square away from, despite the ball going where you don't want it to go for a kickoff, I had to go and get it set up. And kudos to Phil, he saw it. He pushed me the 1 square away from the end zone. So even with movement 8 War Dancer and 2 squares for rush, 1 square short. So kudos for Phil. Very well played indeed. I'm very pleased that I get some of my other players back for the next match, despite all that. And I think it's something you mentioned as well earlier, guys, when we were talking about Graham and in terms of the attrition rate as well, up to 20. Just before Graham's match today that we'll come on to, I myself am up to 19 casualties against me already this season now. And 10 of those have come in the last 2 matches, which has been, one against, both against Khorne, really. And it has been painful against an Edge team when, Khorne does get on a roll, or when you get a Bashy team on a roll, especially against teams such as Elves. They are fragile, and they're expensive. So you're not starting with sort of 12 or 13. If you're lucky, it's 11, and an APOC usually is 12. So yeah, it can be very challenging indeed. But not taking away anything from Phil. Very good game. He played it very, very well indeed. It could have gone either way, but he did what he needed to do. He held out, and he got a deserved 3-point victory.
So Scott, you're in a similar position to me at the minute. You're 15 points in your group. You're at the top end of the table at the moment. And 15 points feels like an odd number, because it feels like it could be safe for top 4, but there are enough coaches that can just about get ahead of you, but they need almost perfect runs to the finish. Do you feel safe on 15? And are you worried at all that the way that your form's gone, or how safe do you feel right now for a top 4 spot?
I don't, to be honest with you. I'm very pleased that I've got some of my skilled up catchers back, which is going to be something very nice, which was definitely missed in this game. Although the 2 War Dancers, just need a little bit more SP to just get them up to sort of really ridiculously stupid levels. The tree, the bloody tree this season, again, similar to James, similar to against Phil. The tree, and kudos for Phil, he targeted the tree, he got the tree down, and of course for a tree you've got to get 2, at least a 2+ so he doesn't take root, and then it's got to be a 4+ to get that stand up. And I was just rolling 3s as if they were going out of fashion. I could not stand him up. So again, when you're down in terms of players, when you've got a prone player who's just in effect not adding any value for the team on the floor, it can be very frustrating. So going back to the question now, I'm pleased I've got some other key players and not reliant on the tree as much. I need to win against JD my last match. Do I think it'll be easy? No, it's another Bashy team Norse. So I'm not taking anything for granted. I still think 15 isn't enough. So yeah, it's the old cliche. I love a sporting cliche. 1 game at a time. You can only beat the team in front of you. And I'm not expecting an easy match against another Bashy Norse team. So we'll find out next week.
When did you take on the treatment? Because you didn't start the season with a treatment, did you?
I didn't. I think it's his 3rd or 4th match. I can't quite remember, Tom, but he hasn't been in there for all of the season. I think it was to game 3 I started with the tree. And if you look at his stats, 2 SP after all these matches, that's just poor for a return on a tree when you think he's getting 2 to 3 dice blocks at the start. So even when I was getting a block, and breaking armor with Mighty Blow against Phil, for example, my injury rolls were like 2s and 3s and 4s. They were really crap, to put it bluntly. And if you're not going to break armor and you cannot get injuries with Mighty Blow, then the coach, the opposition coach, rightly punishes you.
Well, let's have a look at the opposition coach then. Let's just have a look at Phil's team. As far as players go, he's got some good players there with some good amount of skills, some good SPP that he's sitting on a number of players. On all his blood seekers, he's got the key skills. Every single blood seeker has block now. 2 have horns, 1 has claws and horns. Starting to build quite a vicious team here, Tom. And looking at the opponents that he's played, and we'll come to another one of his games later on, he's not had the easiest of draws. He's had quite a lot of sort of experienced coaches who have been in the league for a while, finished quite high up. He's playing previous champions, previous finalists, previous semi-finalists. He's putting a good run together here and has a good chance of breaking into that top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a solid team and quite a large team as well, with 14 players. So yeah, I've got to arrange a match with him. It'll be my last match of the season so far. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. just looking at his scores and his stats as well, he's up there as one of the most brutal teams with 18 casualties to his name, to only 9 injuries for them himself. So he's been quite a consistent player with the games that he's played and against the caliber of players that he's played against. So yeah, he's clearly deserves his spot up in the top 4 there.
Well, Scott, a tough game for you, but I have to say, watching the stream, it felt like you were. It felt like in a 5 or 6 dice run, you were always that last dice away from pulling off something spectacular, and you got all the spectacular stuff done, and then it was just the last bit. It was very impressive to watch. And Phil said in the chat, trying to out-strategize you wasn't easy, and I think you could tell that from the stream that it was very much like very methodical, very much figuring out what to do. The other coach having to combat it, and the pair of you put a very good show on. So well done for a very entertaining game to you both.
Thank you, Phil.
We will go on to our next game then. Another one that I had a close eye on again for my own selfishness. A 3-1 victory for the Plague Brigade against the Top Hat Society here. A game that I have to say, when I was keeping an eye on this one and looking at how the game was unfolding, I had to remind myself as to what the Skaven team looked like before this game, because I think going into this and seeing this result, I think a 3-1 victory for Skaven against Chaos Dwarfs, I think you look at and you go, that's a pretty impressive result. Bash wise, they're very much outdone there. Very difficult to remove the Chaos Dwarfs from the pitch. When you then take into consideration that Carl was taking 5 journeymen and only had 1 gutter runner in his team, it was very impressive to see him 2-0 up by turn 4. Turns out you only need Scott. You only need 1 gutter runner to get the touchdowns in, and he only had 1, and he got them in. A great Skaven result here.
We talked about this last week, and we said when we looked at what players were and were not left for Carl, we said, that's what 1 gutter runner is all you need, and Carl proved it in spades. I loved following this match on to play. It really, really did. I thought Carl was going to be up against it. 5 journeymen and against a very, very, punchy Chaos Dwarf side as well. Yes, we can argue the Chorfs, they got nerfed with tackle or not, and we could talk about that. But just a big shout out to Carl. This, as a fellow Skaven coach, this made me smile. It really, really did. 2-0 up after turn 4. It's like Merry Christmas, everybody. It's fantastic. Plus, your Roger takes out the Bull Centaur. All going your way, should I say. The fact that it was 2-1 no, Harry brought it back with his other Bull Centaur. We know they've got movement 6 plus sprint, which is and sure feet, so in effect movement 9. And then to see a Skaven lineman, kill a sneaky stabber, plus he was getting the injuries as well. So 3 casualties for the Rats, 3 touchdowns. That's all you need is 1 gutter runner who's now got, rightly so, block. And Carl gets a few players back. And to your point, Chris, it does now look like a very ominous Skaven team. Well done, Carl.
Tom, it's really tough because you should never go into any game with any kind of assumptions as to how it might go. But when you've got like a dwarf team or a chaos dwarf team, Norse team, one of the kind of bashier lineups that you've got, and you come up against a Skaven team that only have the 1 gutter runner, I don't think anyone would be blamed for going into that game assuming that the Chaos Dwarfs would be able to get some casualties and get some kind of remove some players here. It looks like Harry has just been very unfortunate here, maybe not had the dice rolls he needed, and Carl has absolutely pounced on that, because the casualties alone you feel are the wrong way around, and Harry's been quite unfortunate to lose 3 positionals as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bull centaur being taken out, it must have been a big psychological blow, especially the one
With
that
block as well.
has block. Yeah, 100%. I see Carl in chat has mentioned that Top Hats had some rotten luck early on. Blitz on kickoff, got a gutter on the ball, and just couldn't pick up for a bit. A 3+. Second, the ball center had the ball. It was unstoppable. So yeah, I've only played against the Chaos Dwarfs once, and that was Tom Hunn's team. And the interesting thing is that those ball centaurs, they look scarier than sometimes they actually are on the pitch. They aren't invincible. They can be clearly taken out. But just a question to yourselves: 5 journeymen, is that the most journeymen you've seen in one match?
I feel
I think
like
it's pretty close. Yeah.
I will check, because I think Dark Elf coach back in season 5 may have taken 6. So it might not quite be the most we've ever seen, but it is a kind of almost depressing amount. It's an awful lot of journeymen, and it really does throw you, because suddenly you are playing with your rerolls are all at risk because of the loner as well. It really does kind of throw a spanner in the works. Chat amongst yourselves while I want to try and find whether this is the most we had or whether there was one more.
I think the only thing I've got to say on that one is I think Harry is, coming back into Blood Bowl. He's been waiting for Chorfs. He's got some great models with all of his top hat skills stacked up as well. And just to follow on from what Carl said in chat, the Roger, being a Roger, just after you've done some good stuff and maimed people, you roll a double skulls and then you fail that 4+ loner reroll. Classic Roger. Carla couldn't agree more with you. That's part of the fun of why we love them as well. So yeah, as he says, then Harry wasted no time smashing rats either, but just not breaking armor. And one of those games when if you can't break armor and you can't remove, you can't get any injuries and start removing players, a good other Blood Bowl coach is not going to let you off the hook. Well done, Carl. Well done, Harry.
I can confirm that the Bear Elves Dark Elf team from season 5 required 6 journeymen for their second game after taking an absolute beating in game 1. So yeah, not quite a record, but a very, very impressive number. Well done to to Carl, sorry, and well done to Harry as well, because it can be very difficult to drag yourself through a game where nothing goes your way and you find yourself down very quickly. So it can be quite difficult to keep the motivation. So well done to both coaches there for a well played out game. We now end up on today's fixtures. There were fixtures today. Who knew? And we're back with the Gilded Knights of Cerulean in what is a very good 1-1 draw here against the Chaos Storm, Chaos Dwarf teams. 2 teams now both played the same number of games. Only 1 point separates them, both sitting in the top 4, eyeing up the teams ahead. And a very impressive result for Phil here. Scott, coming to you first. It's kind of like what I said before about some of Phil's oppositions. Obviously, your Elves made it through to the final of the conference last year, played Elliot in the final of the conference. Tom was a reigning champion. He's had to play all 3 of you this season. And actually, from those 3 games, he's got a win, a loss, and a draw. Probably his 3 most difficult games on paper, and he's done well to get results out of them.
Phil has done really well, and especially up against Tom. Tom has been playing some fantastic Blood Bowl. So I was really interested when I saw the inducements come through that Tom had decided to go against Phil. Phil was giving away 300k. You don't really want to give away anything against Tom on a good day. So to give away that much inducements, and it was a very interesting selection Tom went with. Bomber Dribble Snot seems to be a bit of his, I wouldn't quite say his signature star player, but I think he's taken Bomber, and someone will have to check, in every single match. Really surprised at Glart. We don't see the Fat Rat much these days in terms of his position. Yes, he's strength 4, I believe, and he sits on the line there quite nicely. He does have the ability, I think, to have a little cheeky frenzy block once a match. And he's got that Wag Drummer, which means then it's difficult for Phil to sit back. And it does give the Chaos Dwarves a little bit of room if people do move back for that as well. So, yeah, and again, Phil really going for it, getting the fouls in where he can. With Corpish, I think that's your dirty player, if I believe, Phil, as well, because I suffered with it from a bit this week from him as well. And then, of course, suddenly a couple of casualties, and you just felt the momentum was with Torn. So again, kudos to Phil. He stuck in there. He kept his game plan. He scored a good touchdown at the end of turn 8, which then, makes it more difficult. So to hold out against Bomber with Glart, who he actually injured as well in that first half, potentially, I think Phil might have thought he could go on and actually win that. He really seemed to be pressing as well. So, yeah, I think it's a really good win. I think Phil's had in his last couple of games, the Knights have really sort of clicked and come together, and yeah, a very good match. Personally, I'm happy with the draw in terms of how it affects the top of the table in the ABBC. So we'll come onto the table shortly. And yeah, I still think it's all to play for from a lot of players. And at the moment, I think the last 2 games have really given Phil a good push for one of the top 4 places.
Tom, we're seeing, possibly with the exception of Mr. John Reeder in the NBBC, we are kind of seeing that a lot of our experienced and previous champions, coaches, no one's having a particularly easy time of it. And I think do you think part of that is because you don't get to play the same person twice? Every game is different. What do you think? Why do you think we're seeing less people run away with things this season? Why do you think it's closer?
Yeah, you're possibly right with that, because it's the fact is there's such a diverse different teams being played, which is great. I do like that. I've said it time and time again in previous seasons. I love the fact that there's so much variety on different teams, and then also you've got different coaches who play different games in different ways, not what you're expecting. I think, not unfortunately, but here, Tom has kind of almost shown his hand by, as you quite rightly say, choosing the same inducements time and time again. So he's got a format down. Bomber Dribble Snot, when I played against Tom, played exceptionally well, and he was very devastating. Equally, I do love the Wild Drummer. I think it's such an underrated kind of inducement. It's one of those ones, especially when you're against Corn, where you can push the players off the line. So then limiting the amount of blocks on the first turn is really useful. Yeah, but then equally, it looks like luck has played a good part on dice rolls in this game as well. So it's clearly a backwards and forwards match with a lot of pressure from both sides.
I think to shout out as well, Phil's just made some comments which just sort of add to what you've just said there, Tom. Phil's saying that he only had 5 players left on the pitch by turn 14. So it shows how brutal the Chorfs can be. Phil, though, to maintain that 1-1 draw with 5 players, Andy says he was only 2 squares from scoring at the end. So it could, and another one of these matches that we're seeing that nothing's really over until the last roll of the last dice on the last drive. So it's really good to see from an overall standard and health check for ADBBL season 8.
Well done to both coaches here.
Oh, sorry. Phil's just saying, I love this. Phil's just saying he served Glart. Oh, that's
the
put in the Fat Rat in the crowd. Love it.
Well done to Phil for another good result. Well done to Tom. Tom's still one of our very few coaches who are undefeated so far this season. I think we've only got 3 or maybe 4 coaches who are yet to lose a game. So, Tom, very well done to that. Well done both coaches for a very entertaining and hard-fought game. Speaking of undefeated coaches, we go to the Transfigurian Terrors in a 4-0 victory against the Wildermere Wasps. I believe it is the Vampires' third 4-0 victory of the season.
Yeah.
A very, very scary looking Vampire team here, and a team that I don't think anybody is going to want to face when they look in the next round. Looking pretty. They're going to need a bit of a shock result in their last game. It looks like not to finish in the top of the MBBC at this point. A very, very strong season so far for John in a 4-0 victory. One which I was keeping a sort of a loose eye on today while working. And I was at one point concerned by how many touchdowns it was going to end. Really, really good stuff from John. Tom, you're our resident vampire expert, as always. What I have been told is that if you look at kind of how the game's gone, John is by turn 11, John is 4-0 up. I'm told that as soon as all of the re-rolls were gone from the vampires, and I think they've got 4 plus any that plus, they've got pro and everything. But as soon as the re-rolls were gone, the vampire luck started to change a little bit and started to run a little bit low. A bit of a story we know from vampires, I guess, to make the most of the re-rolls and make the most of the good luck while you've got it, because it can turn so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wish I had a vampire team like this. This is the phenomenal team. This has definitely got to be the team of the season so far. It's an interesting choice on a number of occasions, especially with the inducements that the Wildermere Wasps took, because Helmut Wolf, I think, is really good, very reliable. Lots of lovely chainsawing on that kind of thing. Fungus the Loon, though, I wonder whether in hindsight it might have been a better option to have Bomber Dribble Snot, purely on the basis that, just thinking about potential setup on the pitch on the kickoff, I would assume that a load of thralls would have been on the line rather than vampires, because those vampires now are really nicely skilled up, and having a bit of firepower against them might have kind of kept John on his toes. But that's nothing to take away from the Wildermere Wasps. It just seems so unfortunate that they just couldn't break any armor either. Those thralls are pretty light on their armor. You got a couple of injuries, but one was I believe, off a foul on 2 thralls. So, yeah, one of those unfortunate ones. Those vampires with hypnogaze, if they find a weak spot in your line, they will just push straight through and dominate. And again, it'd be interesting to see how much bloodlust came into play on this game as well.
It's interesting. Sorry, one thing you said there, Tom, if I just carry on with that, you mentioned the inducements as well. Simon took Helmer and Fungus. John scored after turn 3. So automatically they're gone. So I think if you are playing the vampires as an opposition coach, John has that ability, with the strength for vampires as well, in terms of the throwers and the blockers. So glitters. He has that ability, to have a bit of a bash, but he just shows if you're going to take star players like Helmut and Fungus, you need really to get the most out of them as soon as you can, because it doesn't appear as if they're going to be hanging around on the pitch for very long.
No, we can't see when they were sent off. I don't think that's been logged on here, but it's tricky, isn't it? Because I think particularly Helmet was probably a chainsaw. I feel is a good shout against the vampires, because you don't need to worry about all of those skills, and you've got that massive mighty blow on that as well. So I feel like chainsaw is a very good shout. Fungus is maybe a little bit less reliable, but also you've got the Mighty Blow on there, and you've got the option to mow people down. Looking at the Discord server, there is the comment that I'm interested in, and I'd be really interested if anyone is aware of more information here, is that after the game, John messaged Simon saying, "Thanks for the game. Brutal for both coaches for different reasons. Bash versus Score." So you look at the touchdowns. You look at the casualties. The casualties were even, but there were 2 additional injuries on the side of the Vampires. So I wonder whether those injuries were from some of the weapons, and that's maybe why. Possibly why they're not, if they're not logged in a particular way, or whether they're from dodges, I don't know. But I'd be really interested to know actually whether this game, how many vampires or how many thralls were left on the pitch at the end of this game. I think John went into this game pretty much with 3, with a full roster, and he's now only got 13 players. So I don't know whether there's just something that I'm missing here, but
Could have been
interesting.
bloodlust. It could have been bloodlust. So he could have been biting his thralls, and they've been got casualties as well.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe more to that than meets the eye, but I think from Simon's perspective, he's been quite unlucky that he's met John at the peak, what looks like the peak of a very good vampire run that I can only see continuing. I can only see that moving forward. So very bad timing for Simon to meet John at this point, and John is looking pretty unstoppable at the moment. Well done to both coaches. A incredible game. We move on to our last game then of the day. The Lavender Lynxes versus the Wolverhampton Shamblers. A 2-0 victory for the Lavender Lynxes. A game which, again, I've got a message from Graham about how this, or there's a message in the chat about how this game ended. Absolute absurdity for my final terms. In my final games, the thing that should work, but the things that shouldn't work but do: 6+ pickup, 5+ pass, 6+ catch, all allowing the second touchdown. So it just seems like Graham has had a week of absolute absurd plays, either for or against him. Tom, I'm going to come to you first because you've played both Amazons and Necromantic Horror. I'm really intrigued to see how you think these 2 teams match up, because the armor on the Necromantic side is lower, but they've got all the dodge in there. You've got an interesting array of skills on the Necromantic team, but the claws on the Vampires aren't really going to do anything because there's armor 8 anyway. I'm intrigued to see kind of how you thought, sort of on paper, this game should go.
Yeah, whereas previously we said, look, dwarfs against Amazons is going to be a hard match for Amazons. When playing against the Necromantic Horror team, you wouldn't really know what the score was going to be like. There's nothing; they kind of balance each other out. They're pretty even Stevens, as you say. Amazon's got all the dodge, but the Necromantic have got a lot of variety. So this was an interesting game to see and watch. Kind of clearly, the Amazons were very quick to score and kind of set down the kind of the score very early on in turn 2. But then it clearly those race, I think, were one of the most fun positionals on in Blood Bowl, started causing havoc, just going to town and stat busting on several players, plus killing one and taking them as one of their own for fun. So I know that Jane will be very pleased with that, and I know she loves to embrace the chaos. And just have really good fun games, and it looks like it was a good fun game for both. It's just a shame that second stat bus was on the star player, rather than on one of the Graham's main players.
Looking at Jane's season so far, then Scott, I think she's on 3 wins and 3 losses so far this season, so kind of a 50% record there. It's looking like in the ABBC that we're going to have quite a tight middle field here. I don't think there's going to be very much in between sort of the low end of the Group 3 and the top end of Group 2. I think it could be quite tight. She'll probably be quite pleased to be getting some casualties and getting some SPP on those raids, even if she hasn't quite got the result she wanted here.
I think she came up today against Graham, and we talked a few moments ago about Graham and a new team, and it felt like a win was coming. And I think this is the match for Graham when everything clicked into place. You mentioned the 6-up, the 5-up, the 6-up in terms of that last touchdown as well. And sometimes when you're against that, it is very challenging. Jane is a very good coach. We know that. Is this the second or third season with the Shamblers?
I think season 3 of the Shambles.
Season 3. So key players like Fenris and Jason Kalicki there, and they're starting to get to a point now where they still can get SPP. They still can add value as well. There's still a number of SPP kicking around there for Jane as well. So I don't think the season is over by a long way. I think there's a lot of areas to go as well. And I think with that team, they've got more than enough skills and firepower to get Jane a top 4 place.
Top 4 still absolutely within Jane's reach. Graham, now having played, it sounds like he's suggesting he's played all 8 games. Let's have a little count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. So he is going to be in his finishing position if he doesn't get overtaken. A good game played out by these two coaches then, and you love to hear a game ending with some shenanigans. It's absolutely the way you want every game to end, with some absolute nonsense plays that works. It's the favorite thing that I love about Blood Bowl. Let's have a look at the standings then and see how everybody sits. Looking at the ABBC, Numpties still sit at the top, nobody catching up to them yet. Cherry Bombs still sit in second, and Chaos Storm and the Gilded Knights of Cerulean in third and fourth. Not much in between it at all. If the Chaos Dwarfs and the Khorne win their 2 next games, you've got 15, 14, 13 at the top of that group. A lot that can change there. A very, very tight group. We've then got a very, very tight, bunched up midfield here. 9, 8, 8, 8, 7, 7, 7, 7. A very, very tight group, and I still feel like anybody could finish in either of those positions, depending on how games go. A lot to still play for there. Only the Lavender Lynxes and the Argatha Muirs having played all their games, so they will be looking over their shoulders at the likes of the Crusaders to see whether they can punch their way up the field. At the bottom, Washington Deadskins, Hillbilly Howlers, Odin Ravens, and Boulders Bowlers still propping up the bottom of the table in the ABBC. In the NBBC, John secures his place in the top 4. He cannot be removed from a top 4 space, so well done to John. Bitey Ducks, Norfolk Gladiators, and Bleeding Clowns make up the top 4 at the moment. Looking further down the table, then we've got people moving up. Dead Star Belgrave moving up the table. Plague Brigade moving up the table. The bottom still taken up by the Wildermere Wasps, the Inglorious Pustards, the Dark Elves, and the Boulders Army at the bottom of the table. Still a lot of games to play and a lot of positions to move up on that side. That is all of our games for this week. That is everyone. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Next week, I will tell you now, we will probably play it by ear, depending on how many games have been played and how much more of a Christmas break we all need as to whether we have a roundup. We might do a bumper roundup in the new year. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted as to whether we do one, depending on the games. I know there's a few games booked in between now and next week. So if you can get games in, the shop opening hours are well published at this point. Check it out, get yourself in for a game, and that's it from us. Thank you very much, Scott. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful Christmas, and we will speak to you soon.